Assalamualaikum Wr.Wb.
Hello everyone, we are from B5 and we want a presentation about introduction research. And let me introduce myself. My name is Anggana Aletta. This is my partner. There are Indah Permata Aryani, Kamiliya Eka Putri, and the last Satrio Aprillianto. Thank you.
I will present Chapter 1, Introduction to Research. Business research. Business research can be described as a systematic and organized effort to investigate a specific problem encountered in the work setting which needs a solution. It's comprised of a series of steps that are designed and executed with the goal of finding answers to the issues that are of concern to the manager in the work environment. This means that the first step in research is to know where the problems are exist in the organization and to identify as clearly and specifically as possible the problems that need to be studied and resolved. We can now define business research as an organized, systemic, database critical, objective inquiry or investigation into a specific problem, undertaken with the purpose of finding answer or solution to it. The role of theory and information in research. Well, we have just explained that research comes in many forms and shapes. There are different types of questions research project can address, and there are many different approaches to collecting and analyzing different types of data. The term theory can mean a lot of different things depending on whom you ask. Many people use the word theory to mean an idea of or hunch that someone has. For instance, about the optimal formation of a soccer team, investment banker, salaries of the Apollo program, and the associate non-lending. Research and the manager. An experience common to our organization is that the manager takes of encounter problems, big and small, on a daily basis, which they have to solve by making the right decision in business. Research is usually primarily conducted to resolve problematic issues in or interrelated among. There are of accounting, finance, management, and marketing. Not only are the issues within a superior related to many factors within that particular system, but they must also be investigated in the context of the external environment facing the business. Type of business research, applied and basic. In the work setting, demanding a time solution. For example, a particular product may not be selling well and the manager might want to find the reason for this in order to take corrective action. Such research is called applied research. The order is to generate a body of knowledge by trying to comprehend how certain problems that occur in an organization can be solved. This is called basic, fundamental, or pure research. Applied research. The following example flowing to Situation City in the Business Week and the New York Times should provide some idea of the scope of business research activity. Example, global account for more than 15% of all sold dust sold. Basic or fundamental research. Example, right from her desk as a salaried employee in a bank, Sarah and had observed that her colleagues, too extremely knowledgeable about the nuances and intricacies of banking, were expending very little effort to improve the efficiency effectiveness of the bank in the area of customer relation and service. Manager and research. Why manager need to know about research? Manager with knowledge of research have an advantage over those without. Two, you yourself may not be doing major research as a manager. You will have to understand, predict, and control events that are dysfunctional within the organization. In sum, being knowledgeable about research and research methods help professional managers to 1. Identify and effectively solve minor problems in the work setting. Know how to discriminate good from bad research. Appreciate and be constantly aware of the multiple influences. Take calculated risks in decision making. Prevent possible vested interests from exercising their influence in a situation. Rely to hire research and consultant more effectively. Combine experience. Manager and consultant research. Manager often need to engage a consultant to study some of the more complex, time-consuming problems they encounter, as in the case of Facebook mentioned earlier. Internal versus external consultant. Internal consultant. This department serves as the internal consultant to subunit of the organization that face certain problem and seek help. Advantage of internal consultant. The internal team stand a better chance of being readily accepted by the employer in the subunit. The team require much less time to understand the structure, philosophy, and climate. They are available to implement their recommendation after the research findings have been accepted. The internal team may cost considerably less than an external team for the department enlisting help in problem solving. Disadvantage of internal consultant. In view of their long tenure as internal consultant, the internal team may quite possibly fall into a stereotype way of looking at the organization and its problem. There is scope for certain powerful coalition in the organization to influence the internal team. 3. There is also a possibility that even the most highly qualified internal research team, and last, certain organization bias of the internal research team might in some extent make the findings less objective and consequently less scientific. External consultant. Advantage of external consultant. External team can draw off on a wealth of experience from having worked with the different type of organizations that have had the same of similar type. The external team especially those from the established research and consulting firm. Disadvantage. The cost of hiring an external research team is usually high and is the main deterrent. 2. In addition to the considerable time the external team takes to understand the organization being researched. 3. The external team also charges additional fee for their assistance in the implementation. Knowledge about research and managerial effectiveness. As already mentioned, managers are responsible for the final outcome by making the right decision at work. This is greatly facilitated by research knowledge. Ethics and business research. Ethics in business research refers to a code of conduct or expected social norm of behavior while conducting research. Ethical conduct applies to the organization and the member that sponsor the research, the researcher who undertake the research, and the respondent. Thus, ethical behavior pervades each step of the research process: data collection, data analysis, reporting, and dissemination of information on the internet, if such as an activity is undertaken. Thank you.
Doing social research. Many people use social research to raise children, reduce crime, improve health, sell products, or just understand life. Daily broadcast news program, magazine, newspaper, and website disseminate research results. We do social research to learn something about the social world or to carefully document our guess, hunch, theory, or beliefs about it, or to better understand how the social world works. In research, we combine theory and ideas with facts in a careful, systematic way, and this requires creativity. Tradition. Many people rely on tradition for knowledge. Tradition is a special case of authority, the authority of the past. Tradition means you accept something as being true because it's the way things have always been. For example, my father-in-law says that drinking a shot of whiskey cures a cold. Common sense. Everyday reasoning or common sense provides knowledge about the social world. This is relying on what everyone knows and what just makes sense. For example, it just makes sense that murder rates are higher in areas that do not have the death penalty because it is common sense that people are less likely to kill if they face execution for doing so. Media distortion. Television show, movie, and newspaper and magazine articles are important sources of information. For example, Most people have little contact with criminals but learn about crime by watching television show and movie. Distortion also occurs because their primary goal is to entertain, not to represent reality accurately. How science works. Social research builds on some aspect of the alternative ways of knowing, but it differs because social research relies on science. It embraces a scientific worldview and follows scientific process to create and evaluate knowledge. Science. The social science, such as anthropology, psychology, political science, and sociology, involve the study of people, their belief, behavior, interaction, institution, and so forth. People are slower to think of these fields when hearing the word science. Science is a social institution and a way to produce knowledge. The scientific community. Science comes to life through the operation of the scientific community, which sustains the assumption, attitudes, and techniques of science. The scientific community is a collection of people who practice science and a set of norms, behaviors, and attitudes. The scientific method and attitude. You may be wondering how the scientific method fits into his discussion of science. The scientific method is not one single thing, it refers to the ideas, rule, techniques, and approach that the scientific community use. The method arises from a loose consensus within the community of scientists. Journal articles in science. Consider what happens once a researcher finishes a study. He or she writes a detailed description of the study and the results as a research report or a paper using a special format. Steps in the research process. Social research process in a sequence of steps. Although different approaches to research vary the steps somewhat, must study follow the 7 steps discussed here. First, select a topic. The crucial next step is narrow down the topic or focus the topic into a specific research question or for a study. After learning about a topic and narrowing the focus, review past research or the literature on a topic or question. After specifying a research question and reviewing the literature, design a detailed plan of how to carry out the study comes next. It's only after completing the design stage that gathering the data or evidence. Once data have been collected, the next step is to examine or analyze the data, looking for patterns and giving meaning to or interpreting the data. The last step is to inform others in a report that describes the study background. Purpose of a study. Number 1 is to explore. Exploratory research. A researcher examines a new area to formulate questions that he or she can address more specifically in future research. Number 2 is to describe. Descriptive research is appropriate when you have basic information about social phenomena and are ready to describe it in greater depth. Number 3 is to explain. When you encounter an issue that is well recognized and have a description of it, you might wonder why things are the way they are. Explanatory research identifies the sources of social behavior, belief, condition, and event. Quantitative data collection techniques and design. Techniques for quantitative data collection include experiments, survey, content analysis, and existing statistics. Qualitative data collection techniques and design. Techniques for qualitative data collection include field research and historical comparative research.
Looking for reality. Knowledge for agreement reality. How science offers a specific approach to the discovery of reality through personal experience. Ordinary human inquiry. First, it is generally recognized that future states may be caused or conditioned by the present. Second, we also learn that such patterns of cause and effect are probabilistic. Tradition. Tradition, in the sense of this term, offers several clear advantages of human investigation. By accepting what everyone knows, we avoid the daunting task of starting over in our quest for order and understanding. Authority. Like tradition, authority can aid and hinder human inquiry. It is best to trust that the judgment of people who have special training, expertise, and credential in certain matters, especially in the face of controversy. Error in inquiry and some solutions. Inaccurate observations. In contrast to ordinary human investigation, scientific observation is a conscious activity. Just making more deliberate observation helps reduce error. Overgeneralization. When we look for specific patterns around us, we often assume that several similar events provide evidence of a general pattern. That is, we are overgeneralizing on the basis of limited observations. Selective observations. Once we conclude that certain patterns develop a general understanding of why they exist, we tend to focus on future events and situations that fit the pattern, and we are less likely to ignore them. Illogical reasoning. Although sometimes we all fall into the most illogical reasoning, scientists try to avoid this trap by using logic system in a conscious and explicit way. For now, it is enough to note that logical reasoning is conscious activity for scientists and others. The foundations of social science. Social regularities. For the charge of triviality, for example, people had long recognized that promotion influenced the morale of soldiers. When military personnel are supported and the promotion system appears fair, morale increases. How about the exception? The objection that there are always exceptions to every social order doesn't mean that the order itself is unreal or insignificant. People could interfere. Social research has a recursive quality in that what we learn about society can end up changing things so that what we learn is no longer true. Aggregates, not individuals. Although social scientists often study the motivations that affect individuals, such individuals are rarely the subject of social science. Concept and variables. Social researchers are interested in understanding the system of variables that causes certain attitudes to be strong one example and weak in another. Thus, social research involves the study of variables and their relationships. The purpose of social research. Social researchers are interested in understanding the system of variables that causes certain attitudes to be strong one example and weak in another. This social research involves the study variables and their relationship. some dialectics of social research, Idiographic and nomothetic explanation. This type of causal reasoning is called Idiographic explanation. Idiographic is an approach to explaining what we are trying to eliminate, the special causes of certain condition or events. Inductive and deductive theory. Induction is a generalogical model whose principles are developed from specific observations. Deduction or deductive reasoning moving from the general to the specific. Determinism versus agency. The philosophical question here is whether humans are determined by their particular environment or whether they feel and act on their personal choice or agency. Qualitative and quantitative data. Qualitative data giving the advantage that numbers have more than words as a measure of some quality. Qualitative data carries the drawbacks of pure verbal descriptions.
The selection of a research approach. Research approach are plans and the procedures for research that span the steps from broad assumption to detailed methods of data collection, analysis, and the interpretation. There are three approaches to research: qualitative, quantitative, and mixed methods. The distinction between qualitative research and quantitative research is framed in terms of using words qualitative and rather than numbers quantitative, or using close-ended question quantitative hypothesis rather than open-minded question qualitative interview questions. Qualitative research is an approach for exploring and understanding the meaning individuals or groups ascribe to a social or human problem. And the quantitative research is an approach for testing objective theories by examining the relationship among variables. And then mixed methods research is an approach to inquiry involving collecting both quantitative and qualitative data. The post-positivist worldview. The post-positivist assumptions have represented the traditional form of research, and this assumption holds true more for quantitative research than the qualitative research. Post-positivists hold a deterministic philosophy in which cause determine effect or outcomes. It is also reductionistic in that the intent is to reduce the ideas into a small. The knowledge that develops through a post-positivist lens is based on careful observation and measurement of the objective reality that exists out there in the world. There are several key assumptions of this position by Phillips and Berbeles. First, knowledge is conjectural. Absolute truth can never be found. Research is the process of making claims and deriving or abandoning some of them for other claims more strongly warranted. Data, evidence, and rational consideration shapes knowledge. The Constructivist Worldview. Constructivist or social constructivist is such a perspective, and it is typically seen as an approach to qualitative research. Social constructivists believe that individuals seek understanding of the world in which they live and work. The goal of the research is to rely as much as possible on the participant views of the situation being studied. The questions become broad and general so that the participants can construct the meaning of a situation. The more open-ended the questioning, the better, as the researcher listens carefully to what people say or do in their life settings. The researcher's intent is to make sense of the meanings others have about the world, rather than starting with a theory as a post-positivist. For example, in discussing constructivism, Crotty identified several assumptions. First, human beings construct meanings as they engage with the world they are interpreting. Humans engage with their world and make sense of it based on their historical and social perspectives. The basic generation of meaning is always social, arising in and out of interaction with a human community. The Transformative Worldview. A transformative worldview holds that research inquiry needs to be intertwined with politic and a political change agenda to confront social oppression at whatever levels it occurs. The research contains an action agenda for reform that may change the life of the participants, the institution in which individual work or life, and the researcher's life. The research often begins with one of these issues as the focal points of the study. Transformative research provides a voice for these participants, raising their consciousness or advancing an agenda for change to improve their lives. The philosophical worldview focuses on the needs of groups and individuals in our society that may be marginalized, and there are several summaries by Mertens of key features of the transformative worldview or paradigm. The research in the transformative worldview links political and social action to these inquiries. Transformative research uses a program theory of beliefs about how a program works and why the problems of oppression, domination, and power relationship exist. The pragmatic worldview. There are many forms of this philosophy, but for many, pragmatics as a worldview arises out of action, situation, and consequence rather than antecedent condition. Using Cherryholm and Morgan, pragmatists provide a philosophical basis for research. Pragmatics is not committed to any one system of philosophy and reality. Individual researchers have a freedom of choice. Pragmatists do not see the world as an absolute unity. Truth is what works at that time. The pragmatist researchers look to the what and how to research based on the intended consequence. Pragmatists agree that research always occurs in social, historical, political, and other contexts. Pragmatists have belief in an external world independent of the mind as well as the logate in the mind. For the mixed methods researcher, pragmatists open the door to multiple methods, different worldview, and different assumptions as well as different forms of data collection and analysis. Research design. Research design are types of inquiry within qualitative, quantitative, and mixed methods approach that provide specific direction for procedures in a research design. Quantitative design. There are several quantitative approaches. I will focus on two designs, survey and experiment. Survey research provides a quantitative or numeric description or trends, attitudes, or opinions of a population by studying a sample of that population. And experimental research seeks to determine if a specific treatment influences an outcome. The researchers assesses this by providing a specific treatment to one group and withholding it from another and then determining how both groups scored on an outcome. Qualitative design. The historic origin for qualitative research comes from anthropology, sociology, the humanities, and evaluation. In qualitative design, there are narrative research. It's a design of inquiry from the humanities in which the researcher studies the lives of individuals and asks one or more individuals to provide stories about their lives. This information is then often retold or restored by the researchers into a narrative chronology. Phenomenological research is a design of inquiry coming from philosophy and psychology in which the researcher describes the lived experience of individuals about a phenomenon as described by participants. Grounded theory is a design of inquiry from sociology in which the researcher derives a general, abstract theory of a process, action, or interaction grounded in the views of participants. Ethnography is a design of inquiry coming from anthropology and sociology in which the researcher study the shared patterns of behavior, language, and action of an intact cultural group in a natural setting over a prolonged period of time. And the last is case studies, are a design of inquiry found in many fields. especially evaluation in which the researchers develops an in-depth analysis of a case, often a program, event, activity, or one or more individuals. Although many designs exist in the mixed methods field, there are three primary models found in social science today. First, convergent parallel mixed methods is a form of mixed methods design in which the researcher converges or merges quantitative and qualitative data in order to provide a comprehensive analysis of the research problem. Explanatory sequential mixed methods is one in which the researcher first conducts quantitative research, analyzes the result, and then builds on the result to explain them in more detail with qualitative research. And the last is exploratory sequential mixed methods. Is the reverse sequence from the explanatory sequential design. In the exploratory sequential approach, the researcher first begins with a qualitative research and explores the views of participants. The data are then analyzed and the information used to build into a second, quantitative phase. Research methods. Researchers collect data on an instrument or test, or gather information on a behavioral checklist. Research approaches as worldview, design, and methods. Typically, scenarios of research can illustrate how these three elements combine into a research design. Quantitative approach, post-positivist worldview, experimental design, and pre-test and post-test measure of attitudes. In this scenario, the researcher tests a theory by specifying narrow hypotheses and the collection of data to support or refute the hypothesis. Qualitative approach, Constructivist Worldview, Ethnographic Design, and Observation of Behavior. In this situation, the researcher seeks to establish the meaning of a phenomenon from the views of participants. Qualitative approach, Transformative Worldview, Narrative Design, and Open-ended Interviewing. For this study, the inquirer seeks to examine an issues related to operation of individuals. And mixed methods approach, Pragmatic Worldview, collection of both quantitative and qualitative data sequentially in the design. The researchers base the inquiry on the assumption that collecting the first type of database provides a more complete understanding of a research problem than either quantitative or qualitative data alone. Criteria for selecting a research approach. The research problem and questions. Certain types of social research problem call for specific approach. For example, if the problem calls for the identification of factors that influence an outcome, the utility of an intervention, or understanding the best predictors of outcomes, then a quantitative approach is best. Qualitative research is especially useful when the researcher doesn't know the important variables to examine. And a mixed methods design is useful when the quantitative and qualitative approach, each by itself, is inadequate to best understand a research problem, and the strength of both quantitative and qualitative research can provide the best understanding. Personal experience. Researchers' own personal training and experience also influence their choice of approach. An individual trained in technical, scientific, writing, statistic, and computer statistical program and familiar with quantitative journal in the library would most likely choose the quantitative design. On the other hand, individuals who enjoy writing in a literary way or conducting personal interviews or making up-close observation may gravitate to the qualitative approach. And then the mixed methods researcher is an individual familiar with both quantitative and qualitative research. This person also has the time and research to collect both quantitative and qualitative data and has outlets for mixed method studies which tend to be large in scope. Audience. This audience may be journal editors and readers, faculty committees, conference attendants, or colleagues in the field. The experience of this audience with quantitative, qualitative, or mixed method studies can shape the decision made about the choice of design. Personal experience. Researchers' own personal training and experience also influence their choice of approach. An individual trained in technical, scientific, writing, statistic, and computer statistical program and familiar with quantitative journal in the library would most likely choose the quantitative design. On the other hand, individuals who enjoy writing in a literary way or conducting personal interviews or making up-close observation may gravitate to the qualitative approach. And then the mixed methods researcher is an individual familiar with both quantitative and qualitative research. This person also has the time and research to collect both quantitative and qualitative data and has outlets for mixed method studies which tend to be large in scope.
Chapter 1. Introduction. Work on the first edition of this book initially began during a 1994 summer qualitative seminar in Vail, Colorado, sponsored by the University of Denver, under the able guidance of Edith King of the College of Education. Purpose. Both editions of this book are my attempt to answer this question. My primary intent is to examine 5 different approaches to qualitative inquiry, narrative, phenomenology, ground theory, ethnography, and case study, and to discuss their procedure for conducting a qualitative study. The conduct of a study includes the introduction to a study, including the formation of the purpose and research question, data collection, data analysis, report writing, and standard of validation and evaluation. What is new in this edition? Since I wrote the first edition of this book, many changes have occurred on the landscape of qualitative research, and these changes and my thinking about them are reflected in the second edition. Qualitative research has become more accepted as a legitimate model of inquiry in the social, behavioral, and health science than it was 10 years ago. The qualitative enterprise is much more fragmented than it was, and it is being challenged by writing that advocate for a return to the experimental model of inquiry, such as those found in the No Child Left Behind Act and the National Research Council monograph on scientific research educational. The camp in qualitative research seems to be the methodologists who embrace rigorous methods, the philosophical advocates who seek to identify and expand the number of paradigmatic and theoretical lenses.
Positioning myself. Qualitative inquiry represents a legitimate mode of social and human science exploration, without apology or comparison to quantitative research. Unquestionable to as an applied research methodologist, researcher focus is on research design or procedures, not on philosophical assumption. Audience. Although there are many readers for any text, social research always refers to academics and scholars who are affiliated with the social and human science. Qualitative research is ideal for shorter forms of scholarly communication, while longer works or such as books or monographs may employ multiple types. Organization. Qualitative research is different. The approach and research design of each approach also has its own characteristic. The philosophical assumption, worldview, or paradigms and theoretical lens used in qualitative research guide all aspects of qualitative research design.
Thank you for your attention. That's all our presentation for my group.
Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.